So today we are going to talk about multi-channel listings advantages, right? So we are going to talk about having a portfolio of channels to be successful. Before we start talking about that, right? Before anybody asks, I haven't got that question yet, but I get that every office hour. So this call is being recorded. You will receive a link to watch it later. You will receive it tomorrow. So everybody that is here will receive. If you cannot attend to the webinar in real time, because maybe your time zone is a little off, the time that we are providing this office hour, you can watch it later, right? So you will receive the link. Of course, if you're here in person, you can post your questions on Q&A, and I'll be glad to answer, as many of them as possible, right? So this makes everything, the entire experience more engaging, going over real questions rather than hypothetical ones, right? So, uh, let's get started, right? So why, should you use multiple channels, right? So I'm going to share with you a couple of reasons why, in case you are not sure yet, right? So if you chose Hostaway, very likely, you wanted to use more than one channel, right? At least more than one. But in many cases, I've seen clients that are only using two channels, right? Which is uh, a waste, in my opinion, of opportunities that could be taken, by you and your team, right? So I'm going over different channels. I would like to talk a little bit about the advantages, characteristics of each one of them. And if you have questions about the integration, any question that you have that brings some concerns, I noticed that some people have specific concerns about channels, be glad to address them, right? Because sometimes it is just a perception or someone heard on Facebook, someone saying something. And it's not exactly true, or maybe you just need more information, right? So this is what we're here for, right? To cover more information and to clarify, what it takes to use uh, most of the channels that we have, right? So main reason, like I said at the beginning, right? This office hours, they're designed, and most of the time, we are going to be talking about revenue, right? Because at the end of the day, you want to run a business, you want to use software, but nobody is here because we want to become experts on IT, right? So we want to have more reservations and more revenue at the end of the day, right? So that's the objective of uh, 99% of my clients, right? And so we are here to do business, right? So boost revenue. Why is that? Because you can only get so many reservations from a channel, right? So unless you're getting like 100% occupancy and then you don't even have space, to accommodate more guests, you can increase your revenue, right? So, and most of the clients that I met so far, 100% of occupancy is not one of them, right? So increasing the revenue is you bring different sources of revenue, right? So each channel, think of each channel as one more source of revenue, right? Reach different audiences. So what do I mean with different audiences? If if you connect your listing to, depending on the profile of your listing, let's say, for example, your listing is just a room, a bedroom in a house, right? So, and it shares the bathroom, this kind of thing. So it is more clear that Vrbo is not for you, right? So because Vrbo is designed for the entire house, right? So not shared spaces, not shared bathroom, this kind of thing. So different audiences, and depending on the case, it could be a house that could be on Airbnb, could be on Vrbo, could be on Booking, and it could be on different ones. Uh, then it could be a geographic audience, right? Maybe, I have some clients in US that booking.com brings more guests from abroad, from Europe, from example, right? Because people in Europe has the guests, right? So they have the habit of looking at booking.com because it was more mature there, for a longer time, and they look for properties in US, right? So you have to think outside of the box. We have, for example, integrations with the Hopper that is designed to be for young audience, like Y generation, right? People that only use app. So you could be talking to different audiences depending on the channel. Not all the channels are the same, right? They do not target the same audience all the time, right? So think about it as, again, right? You could be talking to some people that are closer to you, geographically, but you could be talking to people that are very far away, different ages, different perspective, different type of search, and different expectations, right? So that's another way of seeing the channels, right? Diversifying risk. That's a big one, right? So let's say you only have your listings on one channel, right? So let's say that channel changes the rules and they say, well, I'm checking here your property, and you cannot work with us anymore, right? So I'm disconnecting your listing. You can no longer get reservations from my channel. So if you're only in one channel, or if most of your business is concentrated on that channel, right? What is going to happen moving forward, right? You got into a pickle, right? Because then your main sales agent, right? In this case, was that channel, right? And then if you get your listing blocked for whatever reason, in that channel, you lost your revenue, right? So you lost all the goodwill that you have been building, for a long time. So again, it's your business, right? It doesn't belong to the channels, right? Of course, it is a partnership, right? At the end of the day, but it's your business as a property manager, to diversify the risk and make sure that if anything goes wrong, with one channel, you still have other channels bringing reservations, so you keep a healthy business, right? So you don't go down, just because of one channel has decided that, yeah, your listing is not for me, right? So and there are many reasons that this could happen. It could be because of bad reviews. It could be because of local law implementation, right? So different channels might have different interpretation on how to implement a local law, and suddenly, your listing could be on the bad side of things, right? So diversifying risk is a big one. Uh, Many times I get feedback that, hey, I don't like the way that this channel is handling that. So if you're getting reservations from many different channels, then you have the option to say, yes, okay, I'm no longer working with this channel, right? I would think careful about it, right? Because I'm a big fan of using all the channels, as many channels as possible. The main ones, right? Not talking about using 20 channels, then that you cannot even manage, right? But having at least four channels, yeah, that's something that is doable, and you can manage that in a proper way, right? So diversify the risk, right? It is your business, and if you have most of your revenue concentrated, and then I'm not even talking just about accommodation, right? That's for any business, right? If you have all your business concentrated on uh, the single salesperson, let's say, for example, if that salesperson goes away, uh, you will not have the sales anymore, right? So think about it, because the channels, they're selling for you, right? So let's make sure that you have on both channels. Consolidate the brand. Again, it is your business, right? So it is important that people get to know your properties, name and who owns the property, because at the end of the day, people have to recognize, your management, your listings, your properties. And this is a very important one. Why you build direct, right? I get this question a lot. And for most of you that have come to other webinars, you know that I spend a lot of time, explaining direct reservations, how to market, how to do everything because of that, because then you have control over your brand, right? So the channels are important. Having control over your brand, having direct reservations, it's excellent, right? Many people would like to have everything direct, but then do you have uh, the sales capacity to keep your occupancy that high? So of course the channels are important, right? So don't disconsider the channels, right? Maybe a joint effort, right? A lot of effort on direct so that you can build your relationship with the guests that have stayed, make them returning guests, but at the same time, have the channels bringing you reservations, right? Getting more people to know your properties. So optimizing occupancy, right? Again, main reason is oh, most channels will not be able to fulfill all your occupancy, right? Especially if the market is a little slow, you know, all the more reason to have more channels connected, right? And trying different audiences, like we were talking about, right? Talking about uh, uh, sometimes some regions can perform better on booking.com, you know, than on Airbnb and vice versa. It depends on the type of properties that you have, the type of guest that is looking for your property. There are many variables here. The only way to find out is putting your listing available, on the main channels, right? That's pricing. That's another one. Like if you have, ah, I'm going to show you in a minute, but we have the option to create different markups depending on the channel, right? So you can test. Maybe there is a channel that you can have a higher markup, and be more profitable on that specific channel. How do you do that? You test, right? So the same property at $100, in one channel, and you use a markup of a 10%, and it's showing as 110 on a different website, right? A different channel. And maybe the one at 110 is even selling more than the one at 100 just because the audience that ad is being displayed, right? So then one is more profitable than the other one, right? Of course, considering that the commission was taken off, or the net amount, it would be like that, right? And most important, you already have the tool, right? So you don't need an additional tool to connect multiple channels, right? So if you have Hostaway, all of you here, on this meeting, you all have the same tool, right? Whether you have 15,000, 20,000 listings, or if you have only one listing, yeah, you're all using the same tool, right? So these are the main channels, right, that we have integration with. And uh, we work a lot, and this is one of our priorities, is to have the best integration possible with each one of the main channels related to short-term rental, right? There are many more, right? Every now and then I get a question, yeah, do you have that channel? We have a focus on occupancy and revenue, right? So that's why many of the channels that you don't see here, it's not like, oh, we don't care. It's not that. It's just that statistically, we haven't seen a volume of reservations uh, that would support, that would make a difference, it would be representative, on connecting to Hostaway. That's why these are the main ones, right? There is a reason behind it because we tested other one. Another thing, it's not easy to manage different channels because right here, each one of these channels, they work in different ways, right? So every time, during the onboarding, you went through that, right? So each channel, even the integration to create a list inside. So there is a learning curve in each one of the channels. So if you have a big team, sometimes part of the team knows the difference between them. But if I know some other PMS, they have 20 different channels, and some of them, they don't generate any reservation at all, right? Or once once a year. So then it's not something that we consider productive, right? So these are the main channels for short-term rentals, and they are the ones that generate, the vast majority of the reservations here. Right? So we have the tools, right? So the inbox is centralized, so all the communication, regardless of the channel that you integrate, will come to the same inbox, same calendar, right? So no need to adjust anything, to modify the way you work. Analytics, all the financial information, it all comes, as you can see, per channel. So you can see this information. We have this information. We can see breakdown. We can see financial information. We can generate reports and everything the same way, right? So it's a seamless experience, having many channels connected than having only one channel connected, right? So it's not going to change, right? It take a little bit of learning curve, to learn about each one of the channels, but we are here for that, right? To support with that. So I'm here, on a weekly basis, and also we have our colleagues here that I always share with you. Uh, and I will share later. Right now, of course, you have many questions, but I intend to go over most of your questions and everything. But if you still, by the end of this office hour, if you still have questions, yeah, I will share this with you so that you can put your name and request a meeting with one of our agents. All right. I'll be glad to get someone here to assist you. All right. Now, before I go to the dashboard and discuss a little bit more on the practical side, right? So what we talk about, the connections, the integrations, the channels. Uh, I have already some questions here, that I would like to go over. Okay, got a question here, a very broad one, right? What what do you suggest for a saturated market? Well, connect many channels. I believe that that would be my first advice, right? Because you're increasing your chances of getting a reservation, right? There are many things. Okay. It's not a short answer. It's not a quick one. And there is no silver bullet, right? So many things that we discuss here, over the weeks, they're related, right? So it could be dynamic pricing, for example, right? To get your pricing, which actually, let me get another one. Gonna get another account because this one has other people using it and they keep changing the language here just so that we can keep it in English. I'm gonna keep it like that. I'm gonna use mine instead, right? So for saturated market, I recommend connecting many channels. This is one thing. The other thing is if your market is saturated, learn a lot about your competitors, right? So, because when we say the market, try to think about your geolocation, very close to you, right? Because sometimes we see the data about the entire United States or the entire world, And we are talking about completely different markets, right? So you cannot compare the market in North America, for example. If you're talking about Florida, if you're talking about Miami, we are talking about a completely different one profile, that someone that is going to Vegas, for example, right? So just to use like some big and known cities. So first of all, try to know your local competitors, right? So if it is in a big city, it would be your neighborhood, right? Try to understand exactly how your neighborhood is performing, what prices they're practicing, what kind of discounts are they offering. Uh, Try to see the pictures. What are the best pictures that you can see so that you can emulate that? Do they have amenities that you don't have? Because sometimes it could be simple amenities that you can add to your listing, you know, that will help on sales. So many things. It could be pricing, it could be reviews. Maybe you would insist on reviews because if someone is looking at your property, you have better reviews than your competitor, you're in better shape, right? You have a way higher chance of getting reservations, right? So there are many factors, right? There is not only one factor, but most of all, try to understand what is your competition doing, right? Try to understand what prices, what strategies, what kind of promotions, if they're practicing promotional price, right? Check for events, for example. If there is an event on your city, check to see if their price is higher, if they have made the adjustment. It could be that they're using dynamic pricing, right? So you might want to use a tool like that so you don't leave money on the table when you can sell at a higher price. You sell it at a higher price. If it is a slow season, you may have to reduce your price. So many things, right? So, and of course, all the optimizations that we have been talking here, in different meetings, right? So this this would be my recommendation. As you can see, no silver bullet here. Okay. Okay, I got a question here. They're over. Okay, I got a question. Thanks, Pascal. About many different channels in US alone, right? So just like I said, there are many, right? But check check the numbers, look behind it, and see how they're performing, right? How many reservations are they generating? Because there are many channels that yes, they exist. Yes, it could be a new opportunity for you, but it's also the cost of the opportunity, right? So if you're spending too much time in a channel that doesn't generate reservations for you, either you fix your property, try to understand more about the channel to work with that. But some channels, uh, I can tell you one, like TripAdvisor. Until last week, I had clients that asked me, okay, do you have it, before the onboarding? And I said, no, we are not using it, for a long time, the API, because of their support and everything, and then they decided to just terminate their operation as a channel, right? And even big clients with 200 listings, 300 listings, I would ask, how many reservations did you get last year? They would tell me like, oh, three or four reservations. So, but at the same time, every reservations, they had these with reservations. So, okay, so what's the point on having, one channel that is not generating enough revenue? Oh, just to tell the property owners that I have it. Then I do not recommend you take that route. I recommend you take the route of showing the best channels that can be connected, right? And showing reservations, right? Show revenue, show performance on the main channels. That was my recommendation, right? So that's why we are very selective, because imagine that, right? So I going back here. So each one of these integrations, we develop the integration, right? So it's not an integration out of nowhere. It's not a generic integration. We do not use a channel manager, a third party channel manager. Why do we do that? Because we want to make sure that if you have an issue with Airbnb, it's either on Airbnb side, on our side, and we'll try to fix it sometimes together with Airbnb, right? So if it is on their side, for example, right? Booking.com, same thing. So our developers, they're specialized on these channels, on their API, and every time, yeah, they change their API, we make adjustments, right? So Airbnb, every now and then, they modify the API, right? But it's one of the main sources of revenue, for short-term rental, right? So every time they change something, yes, we try to keep up with them, right? So if we had like 20, I'm sure this would not happen, at the same time. And I'm sure that you would have like at least 15, channels that wouldn't get reservations, or you would not get enough to justify the way that you work with, right? So different MOs. Now, thanks for the question. Okay. Doris is asking me two good questions, right? Is there a list of channels that we can use with Hostaway? Yeah. Okay. So that's the first question. And let's go to channel manager. And then we have the channels, right? So these are the main ones, right? So Airbnb, Booking, Google, Vrbo, and Marriott, right? These are the main ones. So we develop the integration. We have full control over that. Besides that, these are not the only ones, right? So we also have here on the marketplace. And what's the main difference, right? Before you ask, is again, we develop the integration to the main ones. We develop the integration using their API, right? But we have the other case. The API, for those of you that don't know, is a piece of software that makes the intersection, you know, the interface with other software, right? So Airbnb develops an API. So that interface allows us to go there and integrate and push data and pull data out of it, right? So, and we also have here, let's see, and then I'm talking about the booking channel, but we have other channels, right? That integrated into Hostaway. That's why they are in the marketplace, but they can be used, and I strongly recommend, right? So Bakay My Way, for example, is connected to Hostaway. You can use Whimstay, Housestay, Hopper is a big one, right? So I have many, many clients in North America using Hopper, right? So there are different ones that you could be using here. I recommend you to come here, and try, right? So look for channels. Let me see what else we can look for. Yes, I believe OTA, right? So let's remove this one. Separate OTA. So there are many. Okay. Some of them are very specific, very specialized. I recommend you to talk to each one of them. Right. So if you ask me, do I know them all? No, I don't know them all because some of them are new integration. They just came to us the way. Some of them were never requested to me. Some of them are very specialized on a specific niche. Right. So then, unless I'm talking to a client that, you know, has that specific need, I wouldn't know, right? And there is always a link to the website, right? So you can click on it and try to understand a little more, right? And then there are information here, you know, so that you can read how it works. Because again, like I said, there is always a learning curve, right? So it could be that they charge commission. It could be that they just put a markup, and then they charge the guest, and then they keep the markup. on the top of your pricing. So there are many different ways of working, right? So they can have different business rules and different technology. So I recommend that you spend some time every time you want to connect a channel, not just go and connect, right? First, learn, try to understand how the channel works, and just see if it will be possible for your business, if that's compatible, the rules that they have with the way that you manage your business. All right. So, yes, we have many. The second part of your question is, do we need to add Expedia and Vrbo separately? Okay, that's a that's a good question. Because there are two ways of doing that, right? So if you already have an Expedia account, right, you can come to Expedia here, configure, and you can map your listings, right? So it is possible to do that through the API. Now, do you have to be on Expedia? Let's say you don't have an account. I don't know if you have or if you don't have an account, but let's say you do not have an account on Expedia and you only manage short-term rental. If you try to go over the link, the Expedia link, they will redirect you to Vrbo, right? And why is that? Because Expedia channel and Vrbo channel are both belong to Expedia Holding, right? So they belong to the same group. Expedia is more hotel oriented and Vrbo more short-term rental oriented, right? So when you try to make your registration on Expedia, what is going to happen is they will, depending on the answers that you give, during when you are filling out the form, it's going to redirect you to Vrbo because if you're here, you're probably short-term stay, right? So if you're in that business, they will send you to Vrbo, and then you can complete on Vrbo if you don't already have an account, right? What is the difference, right? So you can have both. If you have an Expedia account, you can have both connected to Hostaway, and we have many clients that have both. They have Expedia and they have Vrbo, right? But let's say today, if you're asking me this question, I'm assuming that you just went through the process of creating your Expedia account and they redirected you to Vrbo, right? So how does it work? If you have it on Vrbo, here, which is another integration completely independent of Expedia, right? So they are connected just business wise, right, to a holding, but technology wise, they're completely different, completely separate, right? So you can have the same listing on Hostaway connected to Expedia and connected to both. So this listing, if I push this listing to Vrbo, the only thing that you have to do is it has to be instant bookable, right? If it is instant bookable and there is a demand on Expedia website, let's say an Expedia client, right? It's going to their website and they're looking for a property that has the characteristics, the same characteristics of your listing, then Expedia can display that inventory from Vrbo on their inventory. So you can get the reservation coming from Expedia, but it will come as a verbal reservation, right? You'll probably see a note saying that it came through Expedia. So long story short, they share the inventory, right? So if someone is looking for a short-term rental that looks like your listing, Expedia will get that inventory from Vrbo and display that to a guest, right? And make it available. So you would be available on Expedia as long as there is demand for your listing, right? So, yeah, thanks for the question. Alicia is saying that is having difficulty to share the booking engine link. Okay, so I recommend, I cannot open your account, because everybody would see everything of your account, right? So this is a case that I recommend you to add your name here. So I'm going to share the link here in the chat, right? Because this is the kind of situation where I cannot open your account. So I don't want to share information, you know, with everyone on the call, right? So I recommend you to schedule a call. So please provide your email, your account ID, your name, select whatever is the issue. It could be other, right? Select other and submit here. I'll have one of my colleagues looking into your account, right? So to see what exactly you're trying to do. I don't know if you have raised a ticket, you know, yet or not. Uh, but it should be very straightforward. So, for example, this one, uh, it is. I'm just using the standard one, right? So I haven't redirected the domain name, right? So I'm using the standard one that is here on Hostaway. I haven't even modified. I can create a name here. For those of you that's still not using the booking engine, I could put a name here and then it would become the new URL because we have this domain, right? It belongs to Hostaway. So anyone can use it for free or you can use yours, right? And then I don't know how you're sharing your URL, but please add your name to the list, and I'll have someone to look into that. All right. Thanks for the question. Okay. So thanks, Robert, for the question. Robert is asking about minimum of listings with Marriott, right? So this kind of rules, that they have, other channels don't have, but Marriott has, right? So they want to manage just big groups, that manage many listings, but they change with the time, right? So sometimes it is 15, sometimes it could be more, sometimes it could be less. And it could also depend on the demands that they have for one specific region, right? Because I have clients that had listings in a region that they were very interested on having inventory in that region. They made exceptions, right? So, but there is no workaround, right? There is no workaround. If there is a rule, it is a rule, right? If the channel create these rules, the only way that we can have the highest level of certification with the channels is by respecting the rules, right? So we do not create workarounds the rules, right? So if they're saying 15 lists, I would ask again. I don't know if it has been a long time that you have asked, but I would ask again every now and then to see if that's the case. I would test different channels like we were seeing here. We have some different ones that might give you more reservations, but if that's the rule there, it is. There is no workaround. Sorry. Okay. David is asking me how to connect the channels. Awesome. Okay. So let's go back here. Channel manager. So for those of you that have done the onboarding, right? Which I believe majority here is either in the process of onboarding or have already been onboarding for a while, right? So I believe that could be the case, right? So if you want to connect Airbnb, you're going to click on connect existing Airbnb account. First of all, you open your Airbnb account on a separate tab, right? And then you remove access to any other software. Then you connect existing account and then you accept from Airbnb side and from Hostaway side, and they will connect the account. And then you see this account connected here. You can connect as many accounts as you need. So once you connect the account, you can click on import and mapping and you start importing your listings, and it will bring all your listings from Airbnb. Okay. Once you have already connected, let's say, oh no, you're not new to Hostaway, you already have your list connected. Now, I just got a new listing. I want to add that listing to Airbnb. You can do that from here, right? So I can push this listing and I can create this listing inside my Airbnb account, right? From Hostaway. So that's for Airbnb, Booking.com. We have two ways of connecting, right? One of them, the listing already exists on Airbnb, on booking.com, sorry. So you go to booking.com, you go to connectivity provider, everything that I'm telling you, again, it works same thing, right? So if you want to connect more channels, I recommend you to get some guidance, right? Request assistance, and someone will guide you on how to do it. It's not like I'm showing you here because we are here on the office hour. I'm glad to show an overview on how it works, right? But we we don't want you to try to figure out, things, right? So we want to support you, and we have a team to support you on that, right? So, but in general, just an overview. You go there, you point your booking.com, it's on the listing basis, right? And then you inform booking.com that from now on you want to connect that listing to Hostaway, right? And then you go select that, you collect the booking property ID there, collect and add it here, property ID, next, add the property ID here, put on connect, then you select it will be available here to be mapped, and then you click, you select, and save, right? It will be mapped moving forward. Now, let's say you don't have the listing on booking.com, but you already have the listing on Hostaway, right? What you do is you click here, add the legal entity ID, which is your group account inside booking.com here, save, that number, because this is what will determine where the listing will be exported to, right? Because you could have like many different accounts on booking.com that you are managing. So the system has to know which account you should export, right? So then is the legal entity ID, and then you can change the legal entity ID, add another one, and export the the the, the listing to that channel, right? So that's booking.com. Then we have Expedia. Expedia, the only option is mapping, right? Similar to booking.com, but just the first part of it, right? So you go to the software, you inform the on the Expedia dashboard that you want Hostaway to be connected. Then you click here again, add the property ID here. There is a number that you collect from Expedia, you add here, and then you map it, right? So that's Expedia. Google. Google, as long as you have the booking engine ready, you can come here on settings. Just make sure that you take care of the logo. This is very important because on Google Vacation Rental, it's not the same as Google Business, right? So it's your brand that is being promoted as a short term rental, right? So because it is the brand, the logo is extremely important to follow these rules. You add the logo here, save it, and then you can publish each one of the listings, or if you want to publish all, you click on publish all, right? So that's for Google. But again, all the settings, all the policies, all the cancellation, everything will be pushed from the booking engine, right? So it's important that you take care of that, right? Now for Vrbo. Vrbo, uh, again, everybody that came through onboarding, you probably have already seen the process, right? So takes some time to prepare the listing, review the content, connect your Stripe. You have to have Stripe connected because you need to be the merchant of record. You have to review the listing name, the property name, the headline name, some of specific fields I recommend you to review. Then you go through a link, and that link uh, that belongs to Vrbo, you will complete providing them the information and formally requesting the integration, right? And then they will reach out to you. They will request a mapping on the spreadsheet. You will provide the information. You may have to upload reservations here from Vrbo, from your previous software or not. And then the connection will be made. On Vrbo, it takes a couple of days because it is a human-led process, right? So the other ones that I was telling you about, Airbnb, Booking, Expedia, it's all software to software. right? So no need to get anyone involved. Vrbo is a little different. They have a team to support the transition, right? Now, Marriott, right? So Marriott, in order to export Marriott, you have to have one specific ID to add here that Marriott will provide to you so that you can export your listings to Marriott. And only the listings that have been pre-approved by Marriott are the ones that you will be able to export, right? So you will start talking to Marriott, right? And request the integration with Hostaway. They will give you a new account number, and that will be the number that you will add here to the system. And then you will be able to export the listings that you have been previously approved, right? So not a little different in this case because the other channels are not going to ask you, if uh, questions about the listing to pre-screen them, right? So not Airbnb or Booking.com. They would just accept it, right? Marriott, no, it's a different process. They check your listing, see if it is okay. If they accept your listing, then they push it, right? So booking engine as a channel, no, it's like I said, right? So it's as soon as you bring your listings in, it's up, right? So, but now, if you want to customize the design, if you want to customize a couple of things, if you want to use a widget to integrate to another website, yeah, there are many things that still can be done, but the booking engine is a native one, right? So as soon as you bring, it's on, right? And then from the marketplace again, right? So if you're looking for another OTA, like any of this one, I recommend you to click on connect. It's not going to connect you right away, right? It's going to give you some instructions, some background story, why it is important, why it is not. And then you have how to go to the user guide, or sometimes can be connected. It will create an API, for integration, or you can go to the user guide, right? And then we have articles about that you can go. So everything that I'm telling you here, you can also find on the user guide, right? So on the user guide, you can find this. You can find, if I look for Vrbo, for example, I gave you a very quick explanation, on how it works, right? But there are many details here that you probably noticed when you were trying to connect your Vrbo account. Do you have to do that every time? No, just the first time that you connect. The integration of the new listings, that's a lot easier. All right. So that's an overview again, right? So if you would like to connect channels and you need assistance, by all means, right? So ask for us because sometimes we know that we can help, because our team is trained on that. So if you have someone that is good with following the user guide, yeah, by all means you can do it, right? But if you need any help, we are here to support you. Thanks for the question, David. Okay. Gonna Thanks for the question, Stephanie. She's asking about the difference between booking engine and Hostaway direct channels, right? So, depending on how you see it, right? So, if we are talking, let me see the best way to show this information. So, when we are talking about booking engine, which is the website, right? So, and direct doesn't have reservation. An integration, right? So what's the difference between booking engine and website? Why we call it booking engine? First of all, because we can have more than one website, right? So we can have more than one, and it also pushes information to Google. So that's why we call it an engine, right? So not necessarily the website. So this one is the website. I can have this one here. And as you can see, it's already a different layout, different listings that are connected, different things happen, right? So this is the booking engine. This is the link that is going to open, not this one. This was the previous one. If I use this one here, it's going to show. So if someone makes a reservation from here, it will come as website. right? So you see on the calendar, you can create rules for that, different rules. If you create, but if you come here, right, and I decide to create a reservation here and add the reservation to the dashboard, maybe because I have someone over the phone, I know is a returning guest. I'm creating this reservation. This will be a direct. This will not be a booking agent. That's the main difference, right? Uh, in some ways, booking agent, direct, and Google, they work more or less the same because there is no channel commission being charged, right? So there is nothing like a third party involved. You can have your own rules, right? So in that way, they're part of direct reservations. But technically, you have direct, you have a website, and you have Google that also work kind of a direct, right? So, but a direct would be this, creating a reservation from the dashboard. All right. Thanks for the question. All right. So Sergio is asking me, hi Sergio, about Hopper, a little bit more about Hopper, right? So uh, let me go back here to the marketplace. I got a lot of good feedback about Hopper. Again, they're designed to work only uh, as a mobile platform. So they're directed to young people, right? I recommend you to connect, test, and see how it works for you. That's the only way. Sometimes it is the only way because sometimes a channel can work very well, for a client and not work very well for different ones, right? But they have a big structure, right? Of the smaller OTAs, they have a big structure already built, right? So I would, investigate. If you're in US, right, you have to be working in US dollars to work with them, right? Again, each one of the channels might have some uh, difference, that you may have to adapt, or maybe it's not even for you. Like Marriott, for example, if they create a rule of minimum of 15 listings, yeah, sorry, but then there is not not a way to connect. But if you check this ones here, I recommend. I got many good feedback about them, about BNB Finder. You know, if you have chalets, again, now we're talking about niches, right? So glamping hub. So they're niches, right? So some of them are not for everyone, you know, got to go, also got Whimstay is also, I have many clients that have integrated and came our way. So I would test, I would talk. You can call them, right? You can ask them, hey, I want to know more about your OTA because each one of you here in this office how have a different business model. Might be similar, but there could be something, on the way that they work, that is something that you're not willing to, right? So it could be some of them are focused, for example, on last minute booking, right? So if that's the case, maybe you don't work with that, right? So maybe it's not for you. But on the other hand, if that's something that you want to sell, right, because you don't want to miss the opportunity, then that's exactly for you, right? So think about it. Look, spend some time here. We are not talking about too many, right? So come here, select OTAs, and go over each one of them. I recommend that you visit the site or even just being on the site and say, yes, I would like to talk to a representative because it could be, and I'm assuming, of course, that you already have all the channels that, we have available, like the most important OTAs like Airbnb, Booking.com, Expedia, and Vrbo, right? And the booking engine and Google, right? If you got that covered and you're still looking for more, then you go for them. If you haven't used all the channels yet, I would focus on the channels and then I would go, for different partners. All right. Okay, Marion is asking here, how do I request next stage of onboarding? There is only one stage, and it leads to graduation. This kind of meetings is exactly to learn more about the tool. There is no different phase, But I'm assuming that what you mean is that you haven't completed yet, right? So if you haven't completed yet, and by some chance, this you couldn't complete your onboarding, I'm sharing the link. Please provide me with your email, your account ID. The account ID, you can find it here, right? On settings. And then you can find it here, right? This is my account ID. This is my email. Please provide me that information that I will ask the onboarding specialist to reach out to you and complete your onboarding. Okay. Another question about Expedia and Vrbo from Judy. If you are on Vrbo, do you need to set up on Expedia as well? Doesn't it share the listing? Yeah, I believe you missed the part that I mentioned. Yes, it does share the listing on Expedia if someone is looking for a property, like yours on Expedia, and they promote that inventory, right? Might be that they prefer to promote hotels, but it could be that your listing is unique, in the sense that the guest is looking for, right? So yes, you don't have to put your listing on Expedia because they will get that inventory from Vrbo to share, with the guest, with Expedia guests, right? So technically, you are exposed on Expedia. All right. Now, questions about markups, right? How can I add different markups? You go to the listing. Here on the listing, you come to price and fees, and then you can select different markups, right? So I can add the markup here for the booking engine. I can add the markup here for partners, right? I only have one field for partners. So whatever markup you use as a strategy to work with different partners, just pick one. If it is 10% or 15%, partners are the OTAs in this case, right? Are the OTAs that are on the marketplace, right? The ones that I was showing you in a minute, right? If it is a channel that we have a direct integration, you can add the markup here and it will populate, right? So again, for those of you that don't know what markup is, if I have $100 on the calendar, our system will check the $100, will add the 10% when pushing the pricing, the rates to Airbnb, right? That's how it works. And that's why you can see different pricing on the calendar if you click on show listing markup. All right. Okay, very good question, Robert. Are there cases where Google Bookings come across as booking engine instead of being tagged as Google? Yes. And why is that? Because if someone comes to Google, they will come to the booking engine to complete the reservation, right? In that case, it will be displayed as Google. But let's say someone comes, through Google, they look for the listing, they decide, I'm not booking now, I'm going to book later. And then they got another computer, for example, right? And then they got the listing and they come straight to Hostaway. Sometimes there is no way to map. That is the same guest that came through booking the first time, disconnected everything, came in a different way, and connected to the listing, because they have already been here, on the booking engine and complete the reservation, right? So, yes, sometimes it could be a client that started on Google. And then once they were redirected to a booking engine to complete the transaction. They didn't complete at the time. They came later, and then they were able to book as a website, right? Not as a Google. Okay. Yeah. Very good question. Thank you very much. Well, sorry, but we are a little past time here, so I appreciate you all being here, all the questions, all the engagement. It's really awesome, the very, very good questions. I appreciate that. It makes it a lot more interesting. Um, you will receive the link, to watch the webinar tomorrow. And thank you very much. I hope you have filled, here the information, and I'll get someone, to reach out to you. All right. Thank you very much, and see you next week. Bye bye.